So let us start with our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manostam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namoste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shubhanu Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Prabhupada Swami Namane. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharani Visheshna Vajapascha Dhisthani Mukam Karti Vacharam Bhagam Gayate Girim Yat Kripada Maham Vande Shri Gurum Deen Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om. Hare Krishna. As always, I am grateful to all of you for giving me this opportunity to serve all of you by sharing the beautiful message of the Gita. We are now at the culmination of the Gita. We are entering today the conclusive chapter, chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. The chapter is entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. And this particular chapter very beautifully summarizes the instructions of the Gita. It also concludes by giving the summary, essential instructions of the Gita in terms of the Lord's final instructions to Arjuna. That of all the instructions, what is the topmost thing? If you don't remember anything else, just remember this thing. So Krishna gives that at the end of the Gita. Sometimes after reading through the Gita, we wonder, oh, so many things. What should I do first? What should I do now? So sometimes when there are so many things to do, what is it that is most important? What is it that should be the guide as the super instruction on top of everything else? Where others are supporting instructions, whereas there is actually one super instruction which is the key guiding compass of our lives. Yes, correct. So when we know the destination, when we know the destination is like this, sometimes we may slightly go take this road or that road or toll, no toll, whatever, but we are headed in that direction. So Krishna gives that essential instructions towards the end, and the Gita concludes with Krishna explaining the glory of the Bhagavad Gita and the benefits that accrue to those who study the Bhagavad Gita and those who teach the Bhagavad Gita. So the Falashruti, and this is very traditional in pujas, and at the end of most pujas, stotras, there is a Falashruti. What is the result of this prayer, result of this performing this puja? So the Falashruti is given. And in that way, the Bhagavad Gita concludes. So my intention is this particular chapter has 78 shlokas. we will need at least 5 classes, and I'm hoping I can conclude within five classes. It may go to 6, hopefully not beyond that. So hang on. And also, like what I mentioned in the chat group, this is also a wonderful opportunity for those who have not been regularly attending the classes, also to, through this 18th chapter, to get a summary understanding of the most important aspects of what Krishna has taught to Arjuna. So please do not miss the classes, 5 to 6 classes. So hopefully we are almost at the end of April. So hopefully by early June, the first or second week of June, we should have concluded this study of the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita is set up in the context of Arjuna's bewilderment. Is set up in the context of Arjuna being indecisive and confused about his duty. Should I really fight this war? Is it the right thing for me to do? How will I be impacted? And so many thoughts were running in his mind. We discussed that in the first couple of chapters of, oh, this can happen, that can happen, this will happen. And being a very compassionate person as well as a very dharma-centered person, a very dharmic person, being very sensitive to the principles of religion, he does a lot of self-analysis using the best intelligence he has at his disposal to try to analyze, to see how he could potentially be impacted if he participates in this war. And he almost comes to the conclusion, actually he does come to the conclusion, that I don't want to fight. It is better to not fight than to fight, because I will be affected by sin. I will not be able to enjoy. There are many reasons he gives. But one of the most paramount things which is in his mind is, I will be affected by sins. And this war will not produce an auspicious result. Krishna begins his instructions in the Bhagavad Gita first by chastising him. By chastising him, by first calling him out as a person who is presenting himself to be learned, but actually is not learned. Because the kind of arguments he was making were not the kind of arguments that a truly learned person would make. A person who is well versed with the understanding of universal principles, with progressive spiritual principles, would not make such an argument. And that is why Krishna goes through this great pain, almost 700 verses of trying to change the perspective of Arjuna so that he can understand what is actually good for him. And actually, Krishna, interestingly, he does that only when Arjuna surrenders to him and tells him, I'm so confused. Actually, I thought I had made my decision, but even after making my decisions, I'm still not sure whether I made the right decision. So I'm surrendering to you, Krishna. Karpanya doshu pahat swabhava prichhami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha yash shreyasya nishchitam bruhitanme shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapan. I'm confused about what is my duty. Dharma sammuda. I don't know what is my dharma in this situation. Is it to fight or is it to not fight? Because both directions I see problems. Please, you tell me. I'm so confused. You tell me. What is best for me in this situation? So, of course, even though Krishna upfront itself told Arjuna that it is better for you to fight than not fight, but Arjuna's intelligence was not fully convinced until so many questions were asked by Arjuna repeatedly to Krishna. And across these various chapters, Krishna has been explaining explaining the spiritual principles which govern reality, and how we as living entities function within those principles, and how we should act and behave, and how we should govern our lives and lead our lives in a way that we are spiritually progressive and we become happy. Arjuna begins the 18th chapter with another question. This is also a very interesting question, which is related to his main doubt. What was his main doubt? His main doubt was the second and third chapter, especially third, fourth, fifth, the first 4 or 5 chapters. His main doubt was, if I perform action, I will be trapped. So if I don't perform action, I will not be trapped. So better I just run away from the battlefield. So I don't want to get involved in this mess. Right? So many times in life, when we are faced with conflicts, challenges, sometimes we feel like we just want to run away from that situation. And we feel that if we run away, then we will not be impacted. But so many times, again and again, we have been proven wrong, that running away comes back to haunt us. Because we are part of a system, we are part of a group, and we are connected. We cannot just walk away. So Arjuna begins this section with a beautiful question. He asks Krishna to clarify about sannyas and tyaga, or renunciation, because he wants it to be very clear what is the difference between these two. Because Arjuna was initially thinking, I want to do a tyag of this fighting duty. I want to give up the fighting duty and I want to take sannyas. He's asking Krishna again at the end, please tell me. I want to understand what is the purpose of renunciation or tyag, and what is the purpose of the renounced order of life, sannyas. Arjuna says, sannyasasya mahabaho tattvam ichchami veditum tyagasya cha rishikesha prathak keshi nisudana. Hey Keshi Nisudan. Krishna is referred to as Keshi Nisudan, the killer of the demon Keshi. Why? Because doubts in our mind about spiritual matters are like demons. Because as long as we are plagued by doubts, we cannot make up our mind very firmly about serving Krishna. That's why doubts are like demons. And Krishna killed Keshi, the demon Keshi, on the bank of the Yamuna. Keshi was the horse demon. Krishna put his fist inside his mouth. So, oh Krishna, who killed the demon Keshi, please kill the demon of my doubt. I'm still not fully clear. I understood a lot of things that you said, but can you please clear this? What is the sannyas about? What is this tyag about? Renunciation about? What is their purpose? Please clarify that. And what Krishna does is, Krishna has actually already answered that question, but across the various chapters. So Krishna is summarizing within the next 10 to 12 verses. Actually over 17 verses, but he essentially summarizes initially over the first 12 verses, which we will try to complete today. He again summarizes the philosophy, what he gave in the first 6 chapters, the philosophy of Karma Yoga. What is the philosophy of Karma Yoga? The most in the context of Arjuna's challenge, the answer that Krishna gives in terms of Karma Yoga is to convince Arjuna that you can still fight in a way that you don't get entangled. That is Krishna's big project for the Bhagavad Gita. The output is Arjuna should be convinced to fight. And Arjuna is saying, if I fight, I'll get implicated. If I fight, I will commit sin. If I fight, I will do this, do that. It will be a worse mess if I fight. Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna, no. There is a way to not be implicated in the mess and still fight. Correct? Sometimes, we become so binary in life. We think either I have to, if I do this, then this will happen. So I cannot do this. But sometimes there are ways by which we can do this and still what we perceive as possible collateral damage can be avoided. And that requires wisdom, that requires guidance. So the focus of Karma Yoga instructions is how to act without karmic implication. And that Krishna described in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad. More so in the first 5, and especially in 3, 4, and 5. So Krishna is going to summarize that. So Krishna starts by summarizing it by giving the definition of sannyasa and the definition of tyaga. Now please understand that what Krishna is trying to explain as the summary of the first 6 chapters is very simple. Let's start with the end in mind. So the answer to the question, the bottom line is, the question is how to act but not get implicated. And the actual answer to the question, which Krishna has repeated many times earlier, is that Arjuna, if you perform your duties in a detached way, then you will not be affected by sinful reaction. You will not be affected by karma. If you work from the space of ego, driven by material motivation, a desire for selfish gain, then you will be implicated. And that gain can be at the level of the body, mind, ego. If it is driven by a material motivation at whatever level, then it will produce a corresponding karmic reaction. And karmic reactions create bodies. And as long as these karmic reactions are there and bodies are being created, one will continue in the cycle of birth. So it is essential to turn off this engine by turning off the production of karma. Now that is a big challenge. Arjuna is saying, if I do this, it will be a mess. I'll generate so much karma. So many people will get killed. That to not ordinary people, my grandfather, my teacher, my brothers, so many other relatives and friends. So Krishna is trying to make Arjuna understand dutiful, detached work is the secret. And now Arjuna wants to understand that concept, how it relates to the concept of sannyasa and tyaga. So if it is detached work and dutiful work, then what is this idea of sannyas? What is this idea of renunciation? Because all religion, so many sadhus are there, so many sannyasis are there, we consider them all holy. And here you're talking about beautiful detached work. I am not able to reconcile it. Can you define these two terms and explain to me very clearly? So Krishna starts by explaining to Arjuna by first defining these two terms. He says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Vidu Sarva Karma Phalatyagam Prabhustyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. The Lord says sannyasa means giving up activities which are based on material desire. Samyaka nyasa iti sannyasa. Nyasa means cessation or stopping. And some refers to samyak means complete. Completely stopping. Stopping what? Stopping activities which are based on material desire. So Krishna immediately clarifies. Krishna says sannyas doesn't mean stopping all activities. Sannyas means stopping activities which are based on material desires. And what is the word he uses? Kamyanam karmanam nyasam, not sarva karma nyasam. Doesn't say cessation of all work is sannyas. Kamyanam karmanam. Kamya karma means those karma which are impelled by a material desire. I want this. I want to get this. I want to be glorified. I want so many likes on my YouTube channel. I want my Facebook. So many followers. I want so much money. I want fame. I want name. Whether we seek that in material sphere or spiritual sphere, if we are propelled in our activities by some material gain, that becomes kamya karma. So samyak nyas, complete cessation of not all activities of kamyanam karma, kamya karma is sannyas, which basically means stopping material activities. And what is tyaga then? Tyaga literally means renunciation. Tyaga literally means giving up. So Krishna clarifies by giving the definition of tyaga. He says, giving up the results of all activities is what the wise called as tyaga or renunciation. Again, Krishna clarifies, tyaga is not the tyaga of activities. Tyaga is the tyaga or the renunciation of the results of all activities, which again essentially indicates detachment, which again essentially indicates giving up the desire to enjoy. So the common theme between sannyas and tyaga, actually when we analyze very deeply sannyas and tyaga, they are essentially the same, because a sannyasi cannot be a sannyasi without giving up material desire, and a tyagi cannot give up the fruits of activities unless he is free from material desire. This one. So essentially both are not different. Essentially, sannyasa and tyaga are not different. One is focusing on renouncing activities of material motivation, and the other is talking about renouncing the fruits of activities. So essentially, if one performs dutiful work in a detached manner without expecting the fruits, one is also a sannyasi and one is also a tyagi, isn't it? Because if one is detached totally from fruits, then he's not performing activities which are motivated by material desire. So he qualifies as a sannyasi. And if one is always renouncing the fruits of the activities, also becomes a tyagi. Then Krishna goes on to explain that there are certain kinds of karma which should not be given up. Now, generally for living entities, broadly there are two types of karmas. There are nitya karmas, regular activities which a person performs, and kamya karmas, those activities which one performs for fulfilling a very specific desire. So for a sannyasi, like Krishna says, kamyanam karmanam nyasam, activities motivated by material desire should be rejected or given up. should be given up. Kamyanam karmanam nyasam. But when we give up kamya karma, one doesn't give up one's niyata karma. So niyata karma still has to be performed. There are certain prescribed duties which an individual has to do based on his particular situation. Even if one doesn't want to engage in activities for material enjoyment, one still has to do one's daily obligatory duties. One's cleansing, one's prayers, one's sadhana, so many other things. Even activities which are basically related to maintaining the body. How can one give them up? So nitya karmas cannot be renounced. So for one who's a sannyasi, he keeps his nitya karma, but he renounces kamya karma. A tyagi is in a very interesting situation. Now, this is a technical analysis. Even though in the verse Krishna doesn't explain this, this is the meaning which the acharyas explain. For a tyagi, he performs nitya karma also and he performs kamya karma also. For example, a grahastha is not only performing his spiritual duties, but he's also going for a job. He's performing so many other activities related to the family, taking care of the family, procreating children, taking care of children, earning an income. So a person who performs kamya karma, but still renounces the results of those activities, he becomes a tyagi. A tyagi renounces the results of all activities as per definition of Krishna. So he renounces the results of both the nitya karma and the kamya karma. So if you look at the difference between a sannyasi and a tyagi, the difference is the sannyasi rejects kamya karma, doesn't perform them at all, because he has disassociated himself from all kinds of material enjoyment. Whereas a tyagi may perform the kamya karmas but is detached from the result. So an example would be a grihastha yogi. Performs kamya karma but is detached from the results. And what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna is that net, both are still detached because both are renounced from the fruits of activities. And what actually matters in terms of not being entangled is not so much whether one performs the kamya karma or doesn't perform the kamya karma. What actually matters is to be detached from the fruits of all activities. And that detachment from the fruits is there for the sannyasi, is there for the tyagi. So the end goal of the sannyasi and the tyagi is still liberation from material entanglement. Okay, I hope you got this. Yeah. Krishna then goes on to explain to Arjuna that with respect to tyaga, some people say that all kinds of fruitive activities should be renounced. Tyajam doshavad ityeke karma prahur manishinaha yajnadana tapak karma nyatyajam iti chapare. There are two opinions Krishna says about people who are of great learned, wise thinkers in spiritual matters. Some say that one should give up all kinds of fruitive activities. And some people say that activities such as yajna, dana, and tapa should never be abandoned. Okay, so two opinions. Some people say in terms of what activities one should continue to perform and not continue to perform with liberation in mind, some people say materialistic activity should be given up, and all that activities includes also performance of yajna, dana and tapa. And some say that yes, materialistic duties should be given up, but yajna, dana and tapa should not be given up. Now, why some people say that they should be given up? Because even within yajna, dana and tapa, there is some amount of violence. The nature of material interactions is that no material interactions are perfectly white. The nature of the material world is every activity has a fault. If you remember, Krishna says that every activity is covered with a fault. So some people take that opinion, especially the followers of the Sankhya philosophy, take an opinion that best to just avoid. Why? There is some fault in it anyway, so why to perform it? There are some who are followers of other schools like Jaimini. They say no, yajna, dana and tapa should not be given up because these activities are mentioned in the Vedas. And because they are mentioned in the Vedas, if they are done properly in the mode of goodness, then no violence or sin will be accrued. And Krishna says, now let me tell you my opinion in this matter. And he says that my opinion is that the second one is the right way. The second is the right way. What is the second? That it is my opinion that yajna, dana and tapa should not be given up at any stage of life. Because yajna, dana and tapa, which are designed in the Vedas, if a person follows them according to scripture, according to his ashram and varna properly, one will never be entangled, because yajna, dana and tapa done in a mode of detachment, as per scriptural instructions, purify even the pure souls. So there will never be a time that one has to say, oh, I'm so advanced, I don't need to do any yajna. Oh, I'm so advanced, I can give up giving in charity. Oh, I'm so advanced, I don't need to follow Ekadashi fast. No vrata I need to follow. No, yajna, dana, tapa purify even the pure, and Krishna says in his opinion, they should not be given up. And that is why in the Vaishnava school, we do not give up yajna, dana, tapa, no matter what varna or ashram one is in. But he says, Arjuna, please understand that yes, these should be given up. So they should not be given up, but they must be performed with detachment and without expecting material result, which means they must be performed like we discussed in the 17th chapter, in the mode of goodness, at least, and ideally, please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then one will always be purified and one will not be entangled. At least perform them with a sense of duty. Higher than a sense of duty is a sense of love. Yes, duty is at least minimum criteria. Higher than duty is love. Sorry. So, Krishna says, that is my final opinion. What is the opinion? Even though Kamya Karma and Nitya Karma, so many of these karmas can be given up. And even if one is performing the activities without material motivation, still Yajna, Dana, Tapa do not need to be excluded from one's life. Next, Krishna says that even Tyaga or renouncing of the fruits of activities or the activities itself can be in the three modes of material nature. And in fact, this concept of the three modes, the classification of Yajna, Dana, Tapa in the three modes, now Krishna applies that classification of Sattva, Rajatama even to Tyaga, the concept of Tyaga. And Krishna explains what is Tyaga in goodness, what is Tyaga in passion, and what is Tyaga in ignorance. First thing Krishna says is, Arjuna, please understand, prescribed duty should not be renounced. So as far as your question is concerned, can I run away from my duties? The answer is no. If you renounce your prescribed duties out of illusion, foolishly being bewildered, out of fear or ignorance, then the renunciation of such activities, the tyaga of the activities, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. What was my recommendation? Not to renounce the activity, but to renounce the fruit of the activity. But if you simply renounce the activity because of illusion, then one is said to be in the mode of ignorance. And then there are some people who renounce the prescribed duties when they find them too inconvenient. They fear, oh, this is too difficult for me. This causes a lot of bodily discomfort. When a person gives up prescribed duties based on bodily discomfort or considering them to be troublesome, then such renunciation is known as mode of passion. Sometimes we make a show of renunciation, but what we are renounced is not from the fruit of the activities. We are just afraid of the inconvenience that we have to go through to perform that particular prescribed duty. So that is mode of passion. But mode of goodness, Krishna reminds Arjuna, is that one is neither avoiding the inconvenience, nor is one attracted to perform that activity because of some exciting aspects of that activity. But one is simply executing that activity as one's duty without detachment, and his very clear understanding of what he's doing and why he's doing. Such a renouncer of the fruits of activities is said to be in the mode of goodness. Arjuna, please understand, do not try to have in your mind this idea that I can renounce all activities. It is impossible to renounce all activities. At most, you can renounce kamya nam karma, and that too it is possible only for a sannyasi. How can you live in this material world and renounce all activity? At least your niyata karma you have to do. You have to take care of the body. In fact, in one of the earlier chapters, Krishna had already explained to Arjuna that you cannot even maintain your material body. So Krishna is reminding the same thing again. You cannot even maintain your material body if you don't perform your prescribed duties. At least your niyata karma you have to do. You have to take care of your body. Even to maintain the body and soul, you have to do certain kinds of activities. The Sharira Yatra also cannot be maintained without performing one's prescribed duties. That is what Krishna explained earlier. So Krishna is again encouraging Arjuna by saying, so Arjuna, please try to understand. I am summarizing the first 6 chapters by trying to tell you, it is not so much about giving up the activities. It is about giving up the fruits of the activities. Because activities, even if somebody gives up prescribed duties, only the prescribed duties which are fruitive in desire, only they can be given up at the stage of sannyas. But otherwise, one must continue to engage in one's prescribed duties, especially continue the duties related to yajna, dana and tapa throughout one's life in a detached way. If one continues to live one's life like that, performing beautiful detached work, then the karmic influence of that work will not stick to the living entity and will not go with him after death. And they neither have to enjoy or suffer the results of the activities that they perform. Which means, Arjuna, this killing, not killing, you're so worried. Just your duty is to fight as a Kshatriya. So just do your duty. But do not do it for your personal kingdom. Do it because it is your duty, and above that, do it out of love for me, as a service to me. If you act in that way, you will not be incurring sin. I've already explained. If you renounce activities or do tyag of activities which are prescribed duties, considering them to be troublesome, I just explained 2 verses ago, considering them troublesome, what will happen? It doesn't lead to progress. It will actually create a lot of problem in your life. Because one cannot simply escape from karma by renouncing the activities themselves. That is not the right formula. So that is why my final advice to you again is that he who renounces the fruits of action is the one who has truly renounced. Who is a real tyagi? A person who has renounced the fruits of activities. Who is a real sannyasi? Ultimately, a person who has renounced activities. Renounce the fruits of activities. So do not be so concerned about the activity. You are in a particular situation of life. You are a warrior. You are a grahastha. You have prescribed duties. Don't be whimsical. Don't be capricious. After having explained that, Krishna goes on to explain another very important concept about the concept of doership. Now, one of the purports of what Krishna has explained to Arjuna so far is that Arjuna, when you perform beautiful work in a detached way, essentially what you are doing is you are not working from a platform of ego. You are not working from a platform of I am the doer. Because wherever there is doership, a sense of doership, karma also accrues immediately. And that is why being free from karma means not having the karta bhav. Karta bhav means the feeling that I am the doer. So let me explain to you a little bit more in detail about this doership so that you can clearly understand that you are not the doer. And if you remain in this understanding that you are not the doer, then you will not be implicated. So Krishna continues to explain in the next few verses, verses 13 to 17. Krishna explains the 5 factors of action. And we have discussed this a few times earlier, very briefly, but we have referred to these verses where Krishna, the 13th and 14th chapter, 13th and 14th verses, explains what are the 5 factors of action. So whenever any action is performed, There are 5 factors involved. A living entity has a doership mentality, thinks I am the doer. Actually, that is only one factor. The performer is only one factor. There are 4 more factors in any action, good or bad. And when one understands that, one understands that one is not actually an exclusive doer, one is only part of a bigger arrangement. And that the ultimate cause of all causes, and in one sense, the doer of activities, is the Supreme. And when one is fixed in that consciousness, one becomes free from the sense of false doership, and one is not affected by karma. So I'll quickly recite verses 13 and 14. Krishna says, Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodame Sankhye Kritante Proktani Siddhaye Sarva Karmanam. I will explain to you these 5 factors of action, which have been explained in Sankhya Yoga. And for any karma to take effect, all of these 5 are absolutely essential. All these 5 dimensions, aspects, factors have to be present for any action to actually happen. Good or bad, doesn't matter. What are they? Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha prathak vidam vividas cha prathak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. 5. What are the 5? Adhishthanam, karta, karanam, cheshtha, and daivam. So let us quickly understand what are these 5. So first is adhishthanam, the place of action, because without the body being there, you cannot even perform any activity. So the place of action or the body of the jiva is one of the factors of action. Second is the doer of the action, the karta, which is the living entity. The living entity whose consciousness is reflected in this body, who is identifying himself with that action, is the karta. That is us, the external performer of action. Third is karanam. The action cannot be performed without the instruments of action, which are the various senses. So the senses are also involved. Then there is the actual action itself, the cheshta, the actual exertion for the action, which is possible because of the pranas, which activate the senses and cause the action to happen. So there is the cheshta through the various life functions. And the last, but the most important, is daivam, the super soul, who sets everything into motion by his supreme will. So body, the soul, the instruments, which are the senses, the endeavor, the cheshta, which is the exertion or the act itself, and the super soul. All 5 are important. And if you analyze them deeply, you'll realize if any one of them is absent, then the action cannot be happening. I'm not going to go into all that analysis in detail, but just think about it. If the body itself is not there, what is there to act? If the senses are not there, how can you perform an action? If you have senses, but you do not actually perform, you don't do the endeavor, no action will happen. If you have all 4, the body, the soul, the senses, and the exertion, capability to exert, but the super soul doesn't sanction your activity, you cannot act. You cannot act. So this whole arrangement of material nature, the body, the senses, the pranas, the way the soul is situated in the body, all of this arrangement is ultimately an arrangement of the Supreme Lord himself. He has set up this machinery by which the soul inhabits the body and lives through the body. This whole arrangement is working under Maya Dhakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam Etunanena Kaunteya Jagad Viparivarti. The whole world is working because of this mechanism that I've done. And this yantra rudhani iva mayaya, this yantra made of material energy, I have designed this yantra, and the interfacing between the soul and the yantra is also arranged by me. So I am, without my arrangement, without my setup, how anything can happen? The Lord is controlling the whole sphere of activity. Because the sphere or the adhishtanam is not just the physical body, but in a broader sense, the adhishtanam is this whole material existence. And all of that arrangement within that existence is designed and functional under the arrangement, sanction, will, supervision of the Supreme Lord himself. And for every action, the Lord who's seated in the heart of the super soul is giving the intelligence as well as the approval, the sanction to perform. Remember, we discussed in the 15th chapter, Sarvasya chaham rudi sannivishto mattas smritar jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So the Lord is controlling practically everything. So Krishna is trying to emphasize to say that the material arrangement is also working under him and the ultimate sanction is also him. So how dependent we are on him. So do not think that you alone are the doer, meaning the soul. All these factors which are all under my control are action, making the action possible. And that is why Krishna says that ultimately all material activities are carried out by Maya under my supervision. Through the three modes of material nature. Ahankara vimudhatma karta hamiti manyate. But the person is bewildered by this false doership, thinks I am the performer of action. But in reality, the activities are carried out by material nature through the agency of the three modes, Sattva, Raja, and Tama. So one is not the only doer of action. All these total 5 factors are there. And that is why he who's not motivated by a false ego is not influenced by karma. Such a person, even though he may be even killing in a battlefield, if he doesn't have this doership mentality, if he understands things as they are, is not entangled. In fact, in the 17th verse, Krishna says, one who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, he does not kill. He is not bound by his actions. So again, the secret of being free from karma is to be free from the sense of doership. And understanding that the ultimate doer is Krishna, is the Supreme Lord. Now, some of you may wonder that, oh, if ultimately the doer is Supreme Lord, why am I responsible for my karma? And we have discussed this point multiple times in our previous classes also. So I'm not going to go into that point in great detail, but I'm just going to, for the benefit of those who are either not remembering that or who have missed the previous classes, we discussed this in detail, that the living entity is responsible for his desire. Because he is desiring that action, the action gets fulfilled through the agency of material nature under the supervision of the Lord. But the Lord is not responsible for the result of that action, because the living entity has desired that action because of a material desire out of his own false identification. That is why the result of that activity accrues to that individual soul. Because the Lord is behaving in a neutral way. He's simply facilitating. Correct? Just like if you buy a gun from a gun shop and you go and kill somebody, you cannot say that the court to the judge, no, I did not kill. The gun maker killed this particular person. I didn't kill. The person who made the gun, he has killed. Because he made the gun, I just pulled the trigger. The bullet came out and hit that person. So how can I kill it? It is actually the gun maker who has killed it. So he should be responsible. So the court is not going to implicate the gun maker because the gun maker has only made the arrangement. He has made that machine work. But how you decided to use the machine, you use your free will to pull the trigger. So the person who pulls the trigger is responsible. Yes, the activity gets executed through the agency of material nature under the supervision of the Lord. But the one who triggers it is the one who's responsible. So those who trigger it with a material desire, they become responsible for what they have done. But those who give up the false sense of doership, simply perform their duty with a sense of detachment, because of the absence of the false ego, the super soul works through them to do whatever is needed to be done. And they become simply transparent via media of the desire of the Lord, and they do not get implicated by the karmic consequences of the activities that are performed by their body. This is a very wonderful, subtle spiritual principle. And this is the key learning that Krishna is trying to give to Arjuna across most of the Bhagavad Gita. Because most of the Bhagavad Gita is focused on this principle of how to act without being implicated. So I'm going to stop here for today. We have discussed the first 17 verses of the 18th chapter. A quick summary in 2 minutes. Krishna, this chapter starts with Arjuna asking Krishna, please explain to me what is sannyasa and what is tyag. And Krishna explains the concepts by saying that sannyas is about giving up materially motivated activities, and tyaga is about giving up the results of all activities. And Krishna is saying essentially both are about renouncing the fruits of activities, and if you perform them properly, one can become free from all karmic reactions. The secret of freedom from karmic reaction is not renouncing the activity, but rather renouncing the desire to enjoy the fruit of activities. That is the secret. And that is why do not be too focused on giving up activities. If you are in a sannyas ashram, yes, you can give up the kamyanam karma. But if you are not, which all of us are not, then perform your prescribed duties with detachment. Do it with a sense of duty. Do it without a desire for material reward. And depend on the Lord and try to do everything as an offering to the Lord. In that way, if you live, you will not be touched by any karma. You can perform all activities but still not be implicated. So you may be a professional, you may be the CEO of a company, you may be a housewife, you may be a student, you may be a politician. If you simply perform your prescribed duties perfectly in this consciousness, you can live through life, going through all kinds of experiences and doing all kinds of activities, but you will come out without being affected even one bit. You will not get wet even though you walk through water, so to say. And Krishna says, even renunciation, if people talk about renunciation, but only renunciation of fruits of activity is done according to scriptural injunction is in mode of goodness. But if one whimsically rejects duties themselves, then that is in the mode of ignorance. If one whimsically, if one avoids performing one's duties because they are troublesome, then that is mode of passion. So always, even renunciation must be performed in the mode of goodness, and that is about dutifully performing detached work. So non-doership is the secret to freedom from karma, and non-doership means understanding the 5 factors of action, that every action, good or bad or neutral or of any sort, always requires all of these 5 to be in place for it to get successfully performed. They are the body, the soul, the doer, the immediate doer, the senses, the endeavor, and the super soul. And of these, the super soul is the most important. In fact, this whole arrangement is working under the guidance of the super soul. And even though super soul is the ultimate doer, the super soul is not himself directly responsible for our karma, because he's only facilitating our desire. If we are initiating an activity based on our materialistic desire driven by our ego, then the karma will accrue to us. But if we act as a conduit of his desire and we perform activities with a sense of detachment, then none of the activities we perform, even killing in a battlefield, will not affect us karmically. Okay, hopefully that helps. Thank you very much. This was a bit technical, but I think this understanding is very important. Otherwise, we will not understand the Bhagavad Gita if we don't understand this point very clearly. So I'm opening up the floor. Sorry, it's 3 minutes beyond time. So any questions, any comments we can take before we conclude. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much for your class today, Prabhuji. I was actually having not clarity on these 2 technical terminology, that renunciation and sannyasa. Now I think I'm much clear on that now. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Very good. Yeah. Thanks to Lord Krishna who has explained, and to the great acharyas who explained. So again, we simply have to remember they are essentially the same, but approaching the same from 2 different angles. One is saying, give up materially motivated activities to avoid karma, which is true, which is one way to approach it, and that is possible for sannyasis. The other way is to say that yes, you can perform all kinds of dharmic activities as long as you are renouncing the fruits of activity. Fruit of activity is okay. That is tyaga. The net result of both is still same, that one is not entangled in any activities. And the key lesson is, do not misinterpret either sannyas or tyaga as whimsically renouncing one's prescribed duties. That is not the intent. The intent is about detaching oneself from a false ego and detaching oneself from materially motivated activities. Thank you so much, Bhaskar Prabhu. Thank you for that comment. Anybody else? Anyone wants to add anything or ask anything? Wonderful. So thank you very much. Hopefully you had a wonderful Ekadashi observation yesterday. So we will meet on Saturday, and we will continue our discussion on the Gita, on the Bhagavatam. Other than that, is there any other Chandan Yatra? I think just started. Otherwise, Narsingha Chaturdashi is coming up. in the next couple of weeks. I think 14th May, if I'm not wrong, right? This Singha Chaturdashi. So another 2 odd weeks away. So prepare yourself accordingly also. Okay. So thank you all very much. Tantara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Samaveta Gaura Bhakta ki. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna
you.
Prabhuji.
Haribol.
Thank you.
Vrinda Premataji, Hare Krishna. Amit Haribol. Thank
Hare,
you.
Thank
Hare
you, Prabhuji.
Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Haribol. Aditi, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Tiniji, Rishikesh, nice to see you also. Is that Gangotri Mataji also there? Haribol. Hare Krishna. Hari Hari. Jai Ho. Chalavinka Prabhu, thank you for joining also. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Sridharji also, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Auntie. Shetty Auntie, thank you. Finally, I'm seeing you. कसे आहात तुम्ही? तुम्ही म्यूट वर आहात. I can't म्यूट वर आम्हाला ऐकू येत नाही.
खूप छान एक्सप्लेन करतोस म्हटलं खूप छान आवडतं.
By the way, thank you so much. By the way, for all of your information, she is Amit's mother, Amit Shetty's mother, Mrs. Charushila Shetty. So Amit is my childhood best friend. He's still one of my best friends, and I used to spend so much time at his home. Stays very close to my home in Bandra. Thank you. Thank you, Kaki, आणि आशीर्वाद द्या तुमचा.
नेहमीच आहे आशीर्वाद.
Thank you.
थँक्यू.
Thank you very much. So I always encourage everyone, please keep your video on if possible. So it's very nice to see everyone and interact. If possible, try if you can. If it's really not possible, I will not insist that as a necessary condition, but it's nice and encouraging for me also to see all of you. Then I don't feel I'm speaking to a wall. Otherwise, I'm just seeing a screen. It's very impersonal. It's a bit odd. Anyway, it's late at night, so thank you for accommodating the time adjustment. We'll go on for another few weeks, and then hopefully we should be able to come back to the regular schedule.